Hey, everybody. Welcome to the GMI Rocket Show. I'm your host, Roman Zelichenko, former immigration attorney turned entrepreneur. I am the co founder of Laborless, an immigration tech platform that automates H-1B visa compliance, and also the founder of GMI Rocket, a digital marketing agency for the immigration and global mobility industry, and which brings you this show. Today is episode 145. Crazy. When I hit 100, I was like, how did I get to 100? And now we're almost at 150. So very exciting. Um, our guest today is Priyanka Kulkarni, who is the CEO and founder of a company called Casium. So Casium is an AI native immigration tech platform that helps employment and business immigration processes end to end. They work with individuals filing for everything from O1s, EB1s, et cetera, to companies supporting their programs. And so it's going to be exciting conversation. Priyanka is a former Microsoft employee, has a really impressive and incredible background, went through the immigration process herself. And so we're going to talk about how she went through that journey, came to the US, worked here, went through the various went through various visas, and then eventually had an idea for starting a company using her experience and expertise in AI and technology. So super excited. Before we bring Priyanka onto the show, I just want to say thank you to the main sponsor of this episode, 8 a.m. DocketWise. So DocketWise is an end-to-end immigration case management platform with best-in-class immigration forms, super customizable questionnaires, tons of integrations, including with my company, Laborless. Really great customer service. They've been DocketWise for a long time. They recently rebranded as a business to 8 a.m. So that's why it's 8 a.m. DocketWise. And one of the things I really like about the team, I've known them for many years, is that they also just create a lot of value and content for the industry, for immigration practitioners, so attorneys and paralegals and others in the industry. So there's really great blog on the company website. They have an ebook that's really helpful. They have a podcast that I've been on. They support this show and so many things. So super grateful for their support. So thank you to DocketWise. If you are an immigration lawyer and you're looking for potentially new case management or even just forms, or even if you're an in-house team, check them out. The website is 8am.com/DocketWise, or use the link in the show notes. And if you do talk to them, tell them you heard about them from the GMI Rocket Show. So thank you to them. And also, thank you, Priyanka, for being here. I'm super excited for this conversation. I would say that you are in Seattle, and I am in cloudy, cold, and rainy New York. So we're kind of in the same. I don't know if it's cloudy, cold, and rainy in Seattle, but I assume it is.
That's a great assumption. Surprisingly, it is. We're getting a little bit of sunshine right now. We did have flurries yesterday, but it's a beautiful morning.
I heard that 2026, the beginning of the year, has been really, really tough for the West Coast snow wise. I don't know if it impacted you in the Pacific Northwest, but I know in the sort of West Southwest it was pretty bad.
No, Seattle gets exactly, I would say, 2 days of snow. And sorry, my beloved Seattleites, I don't think we know how to handle it.
Yeah. I do remember I visited a long time ago, and I remember there was like 5 inches of snow and roads were shut down. I mean, schools were shut down, cars were just all over the place. It was yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're in Seattle now, but I love starting these shows by really learning about and diving into the guests. So you are, originally from India. You were born there, raised there. You went to school there for some part of your time. You eventually did move to the U.S. On a visa. So we'll get to all of that. But tell us about, I don't know, young little Priyanka. One of the things I kind of love to ask is, what kind of kid do you think you were? Or maybe that your parents have told you, were you kind of a super studious kid? Were you one of these curious, taking things apart, putting them back together kid? Were you selling toys or something, or maybe all of the above? What do you remember from that time?
Um, all of the above was but stuck from all of your options. Absolutely enjoyed building. That was my thing. Um, all sorts of things. So we had these it used to be called mechanics. It was not Lego, but it was more like the metallic ones. You could actually build like proper machine, like moving parts, and it was wonderful. And every day I used to sit and, tinker. So you get a pamphlet with like some designs you can actually build, but then you run out of it really quickly, right? You do those first 15 or 20. And so all I had to do was like come up with new things to build through. And that was super fun. I was also an absolute nerd. I enjoyed studying and reading a lot, and always had fantastic grades. And that was something my parents never had to nag me about. I did enjoy, I derived real joy out of learning, and just crazy, voracious reading. I remember summer vacations. The library used to open up at around 8:30 and it used to close at 5. And so I used to be the first one to go in to grab a book for the day. And the days I wasn't doing anything outside, I'd come back, read all day, and come back to the library at 4:30 so that I can take out another one to read for the evening and the night. And it was crazy. And then also just a lot of innovation style things. I remember even at school, we had these interesting projects where you had to go and sell things, and that was kind of fun. And it was a fantastic childhood growing up in Bombay with parents who themselves were sort of builders and business folks at heart, and watching them do that was such a joy and an absolute learning experience. So my dad, traditionally, the community we're part of are supposed to be more of the academics and people who are lifelong, service businesses. And my dad had like 3 other things going on in parallel. And so I used to always watch him like juggle. Oh, today he had a travel agency. He had my parents had like a detergent making business at some point, along with his day job, all sorts of things. And so I grew around a family that was always cheering on to do more, to be more, but at the same time, I saw them doing that firsthand, in a city that is, they call the New York of India, or rather New York is the Bombay of US, one of those two things. It's such a fast moving, vibrant, never, they say Bombay never stops to sleep. And that was the energy around me all the time. And I grew up like that throughout my college, always taking that piece of me with me everywhere I went.
Yeah, I was going to ask if you grew up sort of around more traditional, careers with your parents and other family members, or entrepreneurs, and it sounds like both. It sounds
Both.
like. Do you think it was because your parents or family members were just genuinely curious? Was there a feeling of like supporting family and therefore having multiple businesses? Like, I guess maybe, do you have any insight into the motivation, or were they just genuinely like, this is fun for us? We have a job, but it's just fun for us to have a second business or a third business.
Um, I think my parents have always derived a lot of joy by pushing the boundaries of what you can do with given what you have, right? And
Mhm.
so very, very humble beginnings for them. And if you would meet them now, they would still sort of ask you, like, what are you doing beyond this? What's
Mhm.
next? And always have this insane amount of fire to uh, push. Like they're happy and they're very content, but they never stop exploring. They're retired now, and I still can't call them retired for this very reason. Like it's kind of funny. My dad I think retired quite a few years ago, and he and my mom are still sort of have that fire and the hustle and the energy to do it. And I think that was something that I just grew around. And innately, I was very competitive in wanting to do more too. And I
Mhm.
think that sort of translates in like the way I approached probably my education, a little bit of sports that I did back in the day. art, all of it, like just aggressive, competitive, and like wanting to do more. But doing so with just so much fun around me. Like my mom she used to teach me early days in primary. We never had a printer growing up, and so there was this whole concept of a carbon paper. I don't know if you've known it, like
Yep.
you would put them in, and she used to make these absolute fun worksheets for me. And that sort of became her thing, where she used to now go out and teach other kids, and we had these worksheets going out around. And so there was a lot of joy in doing so as to reach that level of excellence, but at the same time, absolutely having a blast doing it. And I think it's shaped a lot of how I've approached a lot of things in life, is give it your all and have fun doing it, and derive a lot of energy out of it. I think we've always focused a lot on how am I feeling when I do this? Is this something that's just draining, or is this something that's energizing? And sort of really tuning into maximizing that energy has been a fun journey. Yeah.
So you obviously, you said you were, always kind of reading and learning quite a bit. You, I guess, both like a studious and self-proclaimed nerd, as you said, but also trying different things and, tinkering. And you went to school at University of Mumbai. You got a bachelor's in computer engineering. Was that something that was inherently interesting, or did you think of that as a route to just be able to do creative and impactful work and successful work going forward? Because you could have been a doctor, right? You could have been a lawyer. There are other professions as well, but you chose engineering. Why do you think you went down that path?
It's it's so funny. For the longest time, all I wanted to do was to be a lawyer.
Mm.
Um,
Mhm.
and I loved reasoning. I loved the idea of building order in messy systems. Um, when you're in 10th grade in India, that's when you decide like whether you want to do science, commerce, arts. Like you choose between these two streams. You pick one of these for until you do your 12th grade, and then you do your 4-year degree. And at that intersection of my 10th grade choosing science, arts, commerce, um, I remember literally nagging my parents in and out, just let me take that arts with pol science sort of combination so that I can get into law. Um, my parents did something incredibly practical, being them. They asked me to meet lawyers and understand what their job looks like day to day, so that I didn't derive all my understanding of this practice from TV.
Mhm.
And what I saw was a profession carrying enormous responsibility, but operating inside a system where outcomes aren't always correlated with effort and merit. Um, the work, like this whole conversation was interesting because the work wasn't something truly tied to logic or advocacy. It was so much more about navigating ambiguity, delays, um, and especially in India, sometimes forces outside of your control.
Mhm.
Um, and I left those conversations with so much respect for people doing the work, and also a clear realization about myself. I I wanted to build systems that made things fairer, more predictable, um, and thought always could be a lawyer, but realized I was more of a builder myself.
Mhm.
And that was that moment where I tuned more into, like, I always loved math and computer science. I was great at it. I enjoyed the problem solving piece
Mhm.
of this. And so I chose that path. Um, and it was always in the back of my head that this is something there was an itch. And I have an older sister. She's 7 years older than I am, and she had this ticket in the back of her hand where she used to, every time I used to question this, she used to be like, you don't worry, you just, get through these 2 years, I will put you through law school. And even when I was doing engineering, I had these points where I'm like, I enjoy this, I love this, but there's something that I feel I'm not sure about. And she's like, you just finish your degree, I'll put you through law school. And it's like a running joke in the family that my sister has this unfulfilled wish of
Right.
going to law school.
It's really smart that your parents encouraged you to talk to practicing attorneys. I kind of wish I did that. I didn't really have any attorneys in my family, first generation immigrants, and my parents were both in computer science just because the Soviet Union created a lot of engineers. And I totally thought it was going to be like it is on TV. Like watching My Cousin Vinny was just the best. I love that movie. And I thought to myself, well, yeah, if I could, I love arguing, I like reasoning and logic and all that. And
Yeah.
maybe I could be a lawyer and it'd be fun. Anyway, needless to say, if I talked to some lawyers, I would have also realized maybe this isn't for me. And but then the challenge is what can what do you do? It's easy to rule things out, and it's
Mhm.
hard to pinpoint exactly what you want to do. So you kind of ruled out being a lawyer, but you already knew you liked engineering, you liked math, you liked problem solving. So engineering was the way to go. So you graduated with a degree in computer engineering, and you landed a job at Microsoft, right? Like in India. And I think this is really cool. This is a really cool part of your story because I've talked to a lot of folks who, and of course, I'm in the immigration space, and so are you now. Talk to so many people coming to America for their first job, especially folks from India. I mean, there's a massive population of talented engineers who really try to come to the US. And of course, that's part of the reason why there's such a long wait for the green card, for Indian nationals, and on the H-1B lottery side, it's just always a challenge. But you got a job in India, right? Great job doing, working at Microsoft as an engineer, and you were happy there, right? Like you weren't doing that at the time thinking, okay, I'll do this for a year and then I'll come to America for a job. You really liked what you're doing. So can you talk a little bit about sort of, what were you doing at that time? What was exciting to you? And then how did the situation or circumstance come up that allowed you to come to America, basically on a sponsored work visa?
Yeah. I was actually the first engineer in my immediate family, especially a female engineer. And I didn't even have the lawyers that I spoke to were literally people who had the advocate board. Like when you go down the streets, you see there are these boards
Mhm.
where they say, this person's an advocate, and my dad knew a few folks. And so a lot of their practicality came for like, we don't have this immediate resource to connect her to. Let's just go figure. And that's how they found me these people to talk and learn
Mm.
from.
Nice.
And so that was a little bit of context. Like we didn't have any lawyers in the family, and I didn't have any immediate engineers in my family either, which was kind of fun. I was hired into Microsoft actually as an intern in the third year of my engineering. Um, Everybody around me was prepping to give their GRE and come to the US and get a master's degree. And this little internship opportunity, like you go through multiple rounds of interviews at Microsoft out of hundreds of thousands of people, like 15 or 20 are chosen for a particular summer internship. Actually, no, 50 or 20 probably in a few states, and then they have a larger circle too. And it was wonderful. Microsoft was an incredible internship. That internship gave me an opportunity of a pre-placement offer, so to join as a full-time right after. And I I gave GRE as for fun. I had 15, 20 days
Mhm.
left aside. I hadn't taken any classes. I just borrowed a book from someone who gave the test as they were like genuinely studying for it. I'm like, now that you're done, can I borrow a book? And that's how I gave my GRE. And I was just sitting on that score, not sure what to do with it, because I did want to go back to Microsoft and work on something really interesting. Um, so the journey with Microsoft was meaningful and was a precursor sort of to where I'm at right now, was more to do with I wouldn't say advent, but just how much machine learning was changing and AI was changing. So as part of my undergrad, now I'm gonna date myself. AI wasn't as cool. The class that we took was called soft computing, and it sounds like the least glamorous way of phrasing AI. So I had taken soft computing, and you study fuzzy logic and a little bit of neural networks. And that was a lot of my last few years of undergrad, had a few papers published, and was increasingly excited about the intersection of how we as humans think and how do we help machines learn how we think, and using language as that sort of modality, and thinking about linguistics, thinking about the methods and models, and then how do we train machine to think like we do or act like we do. And so at Microsoft, a lot of my early roles were in teams like Bing, which were at the forefront of relevance and ranking and traditional machine learning, right?
And just as a note for folks, Bing is the Microsoft search engine. I'm just saying because Google, you say everyone knows it's a search engine. Not everybody is as familiar with Bing. So you were working on the search side of things.
The search, yeah, the Microsoft search. Yeah, I forgot about that. I forgot that. Yeah, it's been a while. Yeah, and in relevance and ranking in traditional machine learning was incredibly powerful in the way people access information, but it also involved a lot of understanding of, back in the day, you couldn't just throw things in a prompt and expect it to get to you. You had to do a lot of feature engineering or playing with models, trying to understand like the intermediate, what is the model getting now? And if I give it a little bit more, what does it get now? Kind of methods of teaching AI. And I think that was super fun. And it was very compelling for me to think about how to push the boundaries there. And Microsoft US, specifically the Microsoft advertisement, Microsoft as a huge ads platform, they were looking for someone who was working in this space, understood language, but then was also excited about applying it to online ads fraud detection. And they had this role open for a really long time. And I wanted to explore more, and I wanted to see where I could. Data science was not a field. It was still something gray. There was no official titles. And right around 2014, 2015, Microsoft introduced this discipline of data scientist and applied scientist, and this was that role. And I was interviewed and I was selected, and that's how I moved actually to the US on the L1B visa. Is to actually solve a problem that was hard, and at the same time that required this very unique skill set about someone who's been thinking about it for a while, and cared about that space. Yeah.
It's amazing because, coming on an L1B, I mean, this now as well because you work in immigration, you see the challenges that people face when they're, here in F1 OPT and then they have to deal with the H to get their work permit, or they're obviously outside of the country and they're figuring it out. I guess it's a really great experience to come on an L1B, because, the company is sort of, it's I guess easier for lack of a better term. I mean, in some context. When you came here though, what was it like for you? Because I'm assuming the immigration process itself wasn't that bad, right? Microsoft is a great organization that supports the immigration process. What was it like culturally for you? Because now you've lived your whole life, at home, right, or close to home in Bombay, and you are now in America. Like, yes, you're working at Microsoft, but what was that kind of experience like coming here and like now settling in the US? You're an immigrant, a new place. Obviously, you speak the language, so at least there's that. But what do you remember from those early days of coming here?
Um, this is incredibly funny as I think back. I moved from Mumbai to Seattle sometime at the end of July, early August of 2015. Um, it was incredibly hot, and it was one of the hottest days of the year that year. Bombay, you have AC, the traditional fans. Houses in Seattle do not have that, because I don't think Seattle was ever hitting these kind of temperatures before. So I land into this wonderful city and I'm sweating in and out, and it's hot. And I remember telling my friend, like, how did I get here? Like, I left a hot and humid place and I'm back in an insanely hot place.
Yeah.
And is this what America is supposed to be? And I remember him saying, like, no, this is just for a few days. Trust me, you'll enjoy it. But I remember the first thing I did was run to the nearest Fred Meyer and get a fan. That was my first purchase
In
in the
America.
US. Yes.
Yeah, that's
Um,
hilarious.
and I don't remember using it as much. Seattle gets like exactly 2 or 3 like super hot days in a year, but it was really funny. Yeah. But culturally, it was I think things that really immediately stood out was the value for talent. When I joined the team, everybody on the team was just so incredibly smart and so driven. And and also at the same time so diverse, right? So we had people like I wasn't the only immigrant on the team. So
Mm.
we have researchers from Iran, Israel. We have researchers who had come from Japan, China. Like if you had to create a poster of our team back in the day, like we would be like the world representation.
Yeah, that's cool.
And it was wonderful. It was wonderful because everybody brought in their domain expertise, but also linguistic knowledge to
Mm.
this space, right? So we understood how multimodal AI could actually be built. And it
Mm.
really helped a lot. Like later in years, I worked in Azure AI and we built multilingual models, and everybody on the team knew which languages they could test. So we had someone, testing Chinese, Japanese, Korean. We had someone understanding Indian languages. We had people who could ensure that the AI was high quality across all languages. And so I think it was early days was just wonderful from the lens of having a team of incredibly smart, but people across the world coming together to solve meaningfully hard problems. And also just a lot of sense of safety around me as well, right? So I used to work in Hyderabad. It's different for women, and when you think about safety, when you think about work culture, but I felt absolutely welcome and safe, and a lot of things didn't matter as long as I was doing great stuff, and that was amazing. Yeah.
Mhm. Do you feel like you were at the kind of cutting edge of what was, machine learning, large language model, kind of, what became AI type work?
100%. It was
Yeah.
like I feel like I know often folks say that, AI came in 2022, 23, and it just came out of nowhere. I felt I watched this movie in slow motion somehow, from like the earliest models. Like we built one of the early part of speech taggers using neural network, which is like identifying different parts of speech, subject, verb, objects. And at the same time, moving from that to feature-based stuff, moving from that to early transformer-based models, even the T of GPT. And then sort of looking at GPT-3 come, and we tested out GPT-3 early days and we're like, it's good, but is it that good? And then 3.5 comes, and you see that evolution in front of your eyes, and you're part of that story. And there is so much momentum and energy, but at the same time, understanding that as this technology is moving fast, what does it mean to build responsibly and do it in a way that creates access and opportunity for everybody? And it was quite a fun thing to be at that edge.
So tell me a little bit about you're obviously, you're growing in Microsoft here in America. You're working on pretty cutting edge work. You're watching in front of your eyes, AI go from maybe more research heavy and sort of on the fringe of
Mhm.
what's being used to now something like you said when 3.5 came out. I mean, it took the world by storm, obviously, and we are kind of here today in a sense because of that. Uh,
Yes.
and how it captured the imagination of like the average person who saw it in an interface that was now sort of understandable to a layperson. So is that because I know at some point you were still at Microsoft, you start to think about building something, right? And I know you spent a little bit of time as sort of an incubator in residence at
Mhm.
the AI2 incubator, which is also, I believe that's also in Seattle, it's
Yes.
nearby.
Yes.
So tell me a little bit about like what made you start to think about, okay, I have this great career. I mean, you're on a trajectory. By the way, did you get a green card at this point? Because you
No,
oh,
no.
okay. So you're
It was,
still and so what visa are you on at this point? You're at Microsoft for almost a decade. What are you kind of what's your situation?
I was on H-1B. I was on
Okay.
H-1B for a really, really long time, and I was in because I came right out of my undergrad. Um, the two master's degrees I got was while I was working at Microsoft. So I was originally in the EB3 queue. And so you take the slowest moving queue and you put me at the end of there, and then
Mhm.
I'm renewing my H-1B endlessly. Yeah.
Right. Were you moved up to EB2 at some point when you got your first or second? No, so you were at EB3 queue in Microsoft, and so your priority date was like God
Yeah.
knows when, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So you're doing all of this work. You're obviously progressing enormously in your career. You're in H1B. You're extending, I guess, year after year. Hopefully, I guess, waiting for probably. So you were checking visa bulletins for how many years now? Forever.
10.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, we laugh at it now, but it's stressful. I mean, it is
Oh,
really
wow.
like
Yes.
your life is sort of on pause. It's in a limbo basically this whole time because you're waiting to see, well, when can I possibly? And by the way, at this point, if you've progressed well beyond what your original application was, that creates some implications and challenges as well. So, I'm not trying to make light of this challenge that you obviously had, but that was a big part of your life, right? The immigration underpinning of your progressing career at Microsoft.
100%. Like a lot of immigrants, I told myself, do great work, be grateful, don't rock the boat.
Right.
uh, but the truth is, immigration isn't just paperwork, right? Like it shapes what you're allowed to build. Uh, when you're allowed to move, how much risk you can take with life. It makes you doubt ambition, not because you are not talented. It's because system forces you to optimize for stability over possibility,
Yeah.
and that was hard. I guess I was someone who made my entire career by simplifying complex systems at global scale with AI. And immigration was one of the most complex ones I felt I had to consistently navigate.
Mhm.
Um, and you're right, like my breaking point came, I was offered a chance to join the Allen Institute of AI incubator to start a company. And this was always in the back of my head. I was always thinking about doing something of my own. And when I had that opportunity, something I really deeply wanted, I remember saying to the managing director that like, I can't, I have the status that may not allow me to do what I want to do. And that was the early hit point around if I'm working in the frontier of AI, but there are these crazy non-transparent workflows that I have to navigate. And I remember having this conversation with the council at Microsoft around exploring the EB1A path. And they were incredibly helpful, but they also had a very traditional setup of this is the checklist. Like there is no personalized understanding of what this person is doing, how they could be extraordinary. They had this little checklist, and I did not fit that template. I didn't have a PhD. I had two masters, but that didn't matter. And a lot of these things that just didn't feel like that I fit the exact template. And so I did pursue my EB1A with an external counsel, and yeah, that was fun.
So you pursued your EB1A with external counsel basically on your own, right?
Mhm, mhm.
Now, it was this as part of you know, your work with the incubator, or was
Yes,
this still?
yes,
Yeah,
very much. Yeah, yeah. It was because I wanted to start
yeah.
my own company. That was the push around figuring what alternate pathways could be applicable. Yeah.
Okay, so before we dive into what this company was and obviously how it eventually turned into KCM, I just want to take a very, very short pause and say thank you to the second sponsor of this episode, which is Lex Reception. So for any immigration, lawyers, paralegals, office managers that are watching, Lex Reception is a legal intake reception and client support service. They provide call answering services and messages in real time. They schedule appointments. And so they help law firms actually basically have a 24/7 legal answering specialist that's dedicated to the firm that knows how to answer, as the firm. So law firms don't have to worry about missing phone calls from a client or from a prospect or a message, from through your email, coming in through email or coming in through the website. They also proactively reach out, so they can kind of work with a law firm as a sales team. So if anybody inquired about getting support as an immigration lawyer, and have questions, Lex Reception can help a law firm, especially small firms who don't have a ton of staff, proactively reach out and get these folks on the calendar. They integrate. They have a technology interface, so they can integrate with a bunch of platforms like Clio and Practice Panther and LawPay and so many more. So law firms can fit Lex Reception into your workflow. So if you're a law firm and you're interested in learning more, check them out. All listeners of the show get $250 off their first month of service. So use the link in the show notes. And thank you to Lex Reception for your support of the show. Okay, so EB1A, you're going through it. You got it. You're now free as a bird to work on something. What did you launch or start working on?
I wish it was so easy. You said it in like a sentence, EB1A, free as a bird. And I'm like, wait, that doesn't feel so easy. I worked with some incredible attorneys that I absolutely love and respect, but the process itself was painfully manual and very opaque. It took months to assemble, and there were endless documents and crazy back and forth, and a constant feeling of uncertainty. And I first had to explain, what does it mean to build foundation models or build AI so that they could understand what I did, so that they could then better explain to the government what my extraordinary ability could be. And that translation layer almost felt like real expensive work. And it was all done through email threads, Word documents. And that's when it sort of clicked, right? Like, it's a really high stakes legal workflow built entirely on, I'm going to talk like an engineer now, like unstructured data with no standardization and low understanding of predictability here. And we're asking employers and really smart people to navigate it as if it was, just a custom process, very artisanal style, so as to say, every time. I think that's why Casium exists. Coming out of that process, I realized we wanted to build something that was consistently personalized yet amazing at scale. And those two things, a lot of times people believe that personalization and scale don't go well together. But with a lot of what I did at Microsoft and throughout my career was to understand how AI could be built for trust, scalability, but also hyper personalization. And that's what immigration is, right? Like, each and every story is so incredibly unique and so incredibly personalized, but yet it is something that employers have to deal with at scale. And it is that's why, the traditional template style models, like, this is your checklist, do you fit this or not? And if not, you back up the queue again. And we really wanted to change that. I wanted to change the experience that I had, so that no one else ever has to go through this again. Personally, like, the mission for me has been very much around how do we allow amazing people, extraordinary people, to build where they're needed and wanted, and how do we bridge that gap? And I think Casium is the answer for that through my story.
It's interesting because you went from, being at Microsoft and seeing a overly perhaps structured approach, like an approach that was structured for a reason because the volumes are so high, but then you realize you didn't quite fit the bill. And then you had to go to the very opposite side of the spectrum where you worked with, as you said, really great attorneys to help put your EB1A together, but it felt so unstructured that there were inefficiencies there. And so I guess in your mind, you're thinking there must be some way to combine the two. There must be a way to help somebody who's in a similar EB1A situation, and apply some structure to it to create more efficiency, but not so structured where, we're
Mhm.
basically
We're
turning
solving
away.
easy. Yes.
Yeah. So we're giving people an opportunity. So great. Makes so much sense. Now you've launched Casium. You're now a first time founder, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you're now coming from you've worked in corporate environment, this like one of the biggest companies in the world. Um, and how did you launch this company? And then basically what does Casium do today?
Mhm. First time official founder, but had built a lot of teams or was part of founding teams for really interesting 0 to 1 key projects at Microsoft,
Mm,
and knew what it meant to be scrappy, knew what it meant to go out and sell and talk to customers and do that consistently. And and you know it better than I do. Like entrepreneurship, the highs are high and the lows are low.
right.
And sort of, I think it was taking all of that experience and humility of doing things when the resources are abundant, and like bringing it to a space where at AI2 you do get incredible backing. Everybody that comes out of the AI2 incubator is going to say that they help you with the pre-seed, they help you with the best mentors, but that's it. They're not giving you, no one's giving us like access to endless compute, or
Right.
you click a button and issue a GPU kind of situation. And so I think it was uh, sort of like a moment of personal growth as well, on like how to build a company from scratch. How do you care so much? How to care so much about a problem statement and have that relentless ambition, but yet find that path to that execution was the theme in the early days. Um, Especially with the AI2 incubator, we were able to start working with our early customers, around the end of 2024, very quickly. We raised our seed round last year, and had some really incredible backers as part of that process too. And so, yeah, that's the journey we've been on. Casium, as we are. Oh, I need a bit of water here. uh, at Casium, we are building the fastest. Give me a second. Fastest business immigration solution for employers, so that they can bring in top talent and, more importantly, stay compliant and retain them throughout the life cycle. And so we're thinking about it very holistically. And we've been excited and very lucky to support some incredible companies throughout the last year or so.
So, so who are I love that explanation. Let's dive into it. Who's like your target audience, or your target client? Are you working with startups? Are you working with individuals applying for kind of O1s, EB1s, NIWs, all of
Mhm.
them? Other, like, tell me a little bit about, if I'm listening, why do who should I be to think KCM is for me? Let me check it out.
Yeah, we primarily help employers. We've been helping employers from pre-seed to Series F, and increasingly growing the size of the companies we support, especially employers who are thinking of their first immigration program, how to design it, how to stay compliant, how to bring that, how do you pull all of that data into a single source of truth and operate in an extremely fast way when it comes to bringing talent. We are very outcome as a service company. So for us, it is about the time taken to onboard this particular talent, the compliance rates, all of it. But personally, I have a very, very soft corner towards founders, immigrant founders, and have been helping and supporting them since day one. And that has been like this personal passion project that keeps going on. Our attorneys are also very passionate about it. And so even though we're very much a B2B company, we do support founders. And founders, in a way, I still see them as businesses, right? As they grow, their companies grow, we continue to have the privilege to support their growing teams as well. And so that's the key target audience is very much a B2B setup, with founders being a very unique type of business, I guess.
And is the kind of scenario where you might help a founder with an O1 or an EB1, and then going forward, if they need to hire foreign nationals, you would help them with, getting those folks, whether it's an H1B or whatever else?
All of that. We support full spectrum of business immigration. That's all we do. And with founders, it's obviously around O's, and Seattle has H's too, a lot of them. And so that's always one of those. But with the businesses that we support, it's typically for their team members. And so those are common blends of O's, H's, L's, you name it, that comes with the business. Yeah.
So if I'm an attorney, I want to dive in a little bit into kind of how Casium works. If I'm a client, right? What's the kind of setup with legal support, right? Because you're went through the immigration process, but you're not an immigration lawyer yourself. So how does that work? You've built, and your team have an AI based technology platform that what are the benefits of the platform, I guess, and then how does that interact with attorney review, drafting, etc.?
Yeah, we have a full set of technology service, and we partner with attorneys who work with us exclusively. And so when you work with Casium, you get an attorney that's dedicated to your particular not only case but to your company, and they'll work with you throughout the life cycle. They're licensed, they're incredible actually. They're and have been supporting doing business practicing business immigration for decades. And the benefit about working with this particular setup with Casium is we enable the highest speed and quality of operations for so that the attorneys have room for strategic legal advice, the support you need, and have that constant access to them. It's not just around, one time you see someone's face and we're out of there. They are your legal partners in this journey, and we're as a joint unit, enabling that speed, that transparency and access.
So, and I'm thinking about a listener, and I want to dig into that a tiny bit, because a lot of people, I mean, it's not new to say, technology helps with efficiency so that the lawyer can be more strategic. It's pretty high level kind of verbiage. So I'm wondering, from your perspective, what does that look like? Like, what does Casium actually help do and or draft or prepare at this sort of high speed? And then what do you see the attorneys actually, like, practically, what are they actually doing? They're on the phone with the client for 2 hours talking through, okay, if the H1B doesn't work, here are 4 other options. Like, how does an attorney working with Casium actually look different and feel different for the the client at the end of the day?
Yeah, for sure. So we have some of the most, I would say, strategic report cards for people's eligibility assessments that we enable. So we, given your background or given the employee's background, we come up with a way for you to have a clear sort of set of options. And what this allows is the attorney to look at the context of the individual in a holistic way, and in the first call itself, actually walk you through all the possible immigration strategies that may apply. And if one is the path, you almost know in your first call what your chances of success are, what's the recommended strategy. It's not a get to know you call, let's talk again call, then we'll decide call. It's like in the first 30 minutes with us, you know exactly what's the legal recommendation, how to explore it, how to proceed with it. And that's why this is why this technology is so compelling, is we're able to create clarity from the very first interaction. Beyond that, the information collection process, the way the initial drafts are set out, are extremely high quality. A lot of what I did was around legal reasoning, accuracy, and also doing so in a trustworthy way. And so these drafts, as well as the human experts and the legal experts involved in this process, the work product is significantly superior and faster. So typically it's around 10 business days for some of the most complex visa types if you've given us everything we've asked for. And that's like last, like 2 days ago, we had someone who brought in a critical engineer in the shortest time they ever experienced for something that is so complex as one of the old visas, right? So I think those are ways in which, where we talk a lot more about the outcome of working with this technology and our attorneys, is just the speed and the quality and exceptionally low RFE rates, exceptionally high approval rates, and the trust and predictability that comes with working with us.
Now, do you, just because you said you only do business immigration, just out of curiosity, so let's say you get an O1 for someone and they, and become a US citizen, can you help them with the naturalization? If they get married, can you help them with a spouse if the spouse is a foreign national, or is that not yet supported?
Not yet supported.
Okay.
We primarily work with employers and business immigration context. We do help with green card, like employment-based green card
Right.
processing too. Yeah.
What do
I'll
you
shout out to everybody who who now is current from yesterday's EB2 visa bulletin. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, it's a bit. So we're talking right now on February 20th. So the March Visa Bulletin 2026. So the March Visa Bulletin just came out. So what do you see as kind of the future of Casium? As we kind of wrap up here, where do you see the company continue to grow in terms of maybe verticals within immigration or anything else?
Yeah, I think for future Casium, I do want to talk about how I think about the future of a lot of these administrative legal services. Even though there is ambiguity, there is a clear understanding of what a good application looks like and what an eligible candidate could look like. And I believe that the future of these services is very much around the attorneys and the legal professionals providing high quality strategy, enabling the business development and trust building, with technology being the center of all of the operations to accelerate it, to create higher accuracy as well. Some petitions are incredibly long, and
Yeah.
it's only human to miss out something, and this is where there is this sort of like a fuel to this engine to make it exponentially better. And I think that's the path we see for Casium as well. Is we're we want to really push the boundaries of how fast, high quality, predictable we can get with mobility as a whole spectrum, not just immigration, and everything that surrounds mobility as it pertains to employers.
So do you see your
Yeah.
do you see yourself working more with kind of in-house global mobility teams, as companies? Because that typically exists for a bigger company. If you're a startup and you hire 2 or 3 H-1B workers, you don't typically have a quote unquote mobility strategy. It's too small.
Yeah.
So do you see yourself kind of trying to expand into the kind of bigger global mobility space and leverage Casium for that?
Yeah, and it ties very closely with our mission, right? Like extraordinary talent to companies that want to hire them, and everything that involves with that.
Mm.
That problem solving is a space that's very, very exciting to us.
Yeah. And, I was actually talking about that with someone the other day. It implicates also tax. There's, and depending on how deep you want to go, it can be household goods and moving and global mobility is a really interesting industry because it feels so niche, but when you really start digging into it, you realize it touches so many different actual other industries. To get a human being from one place to another, you have to get them a job offer, work authorization, move their physical bodies, move their stuff find them a place to live. If they have a family, find them, that family a place to go to school, build a community. If there are cultural differences, you have to find them potentially a coach. If it's depending on where you're moving to and from, right? For cultural nuances and language. And I mean, it's such a fascinating industry. And yeah, it's interesting. It'll be cool to see, Casium and just in general, technologies start overlapping or crossing between one aspect of global mobility to the other. And frankly, between you and me, as an immigration lawyer, I always felt that yes, immigration, the visa is not the end all be all, but it is an important starting point. If there's no visa, everything else that's downstream can't happen. So
Yes.
I like to end with this question. You have a ton of experience at Microsoft. I mean, obviously, I've worked in an incubator. You're working. You've launched your own company. You've watched it grow. I'm sure people reach out to you for advice all the time, mentorship, and what are the best ways of doing ABC or XYZ. Now, my question for you would be, what kind of advice are you listening to right now? Like what's the advice that's helping you get through whatever it is that's you're growing through right now?
Yeah, it's a world in which everybody is expecting AI to solve every problem, and that's you see it around you. You see it over LinkedIn. Um, I've always been a thoughtful optimist around AI and the use of AI and how it impacts outcomes. Um, and so the advice that people around me, at least for the ones I look up to, has been around slow and thoughtful is smooth, and smooth is fast. And that has been a big thing around how we build thoughtfully, how we do things right, how do we focus more on the outcome. The technology is just a vehicle to get to an outcome, but at the same time, this relentless ambition with path to execution requires a lot of thoughtful building, and that's the theme around me these days, and has always been, I guess, in some shape or form through advice.
I love that. Slow and thoughtful is smooth, and smooth is fast. And that's so counterintuitive because you think, oh, you're a startup, you've got to build, execute, build fast and break things. That was the Facebook motto? And I feel like that has been something that people continue to assume to this day. And it's okay to break things if it's a non-consequential, if it's a mobile game, like whatever, the points didn't add up correctly, not a big deal. We can't have things break in immigration. And so I think it's important for people to remember that the balancing act of trying to implement things quickly, to get features shipped, it has to be kind of tempered with the idea that we have to double, triple, quadruple check, make sure, go through testing multiple times, and really be certain before we release updates. So I love that. That's really great advice. Cool. Well, Priyanka, thank you. This was fascinating, really interesting conversation. You have I wish we didn't even get to talk about your master's degrees, which I think in and of themselves are awesome. 2 master's degrees while working full time. We could do a whole podcast about how in the world you balance your time and still, have so much joy in doing what you're doing and see success. But maybe that'll be a part 2 episode. But thank you so much for being here. This is wonderful to talk to you and learn about Casium and your life story here. And by the way, where can folks reach out to you and Casium?
Yeah, always open on LinkedIn. That's a key place where I love to connect with folks. You can also reach out to us anytime at connect@casium.com if email is your preferred way to communicate. And I am always around in Seattle and the Bay Area. So if you want to hit up, we've got some great coffee, and the offer is always open.
I've heard the coffee there is great. Well, cool. Wonderful. Thank you, Priyanka. I really appreciate your time.
Of course. Thank you for the opportunity. It's been wonderful. Yeah.
Likewise. Thanks. Awesome. What a great conversation. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in, for listening. Definitely reach out to Priyanka if you want to learn more about them. And you know what? I know I didn't ask her about this, but if you're an immigration lawyer and you want to learn about how to be part of the, Casium community as an attorney, reach out to them too. I'm sure at some point or other they will continue to take on more, lawyers that work with them. Just a quick thank you to DocketWise once again, 8 a.m. DocketWise for their sponsorship and support of the show. Again, DocketWise is an end-to-end immigration case management platform with best-in-class immigration forms, really customizable questionnaires, industry-leading integrations, lots of great customer service and just the support that they provide to immigration lawyers with their blog. And I mean, this blog, if you're an immigration lawyer and you do family-based and you want to get into litigation or employment-based, if you want to learn more about marketing, technology, how to sell a company, partnering, mentorship, the DocketWise blog is truly pretty great, which is why I always call it out. They have an ebook that's available for folks and more. So check them out. There's a link in the show notes or visit 8am. So it's the number 8am.com/DocketWise and tell them you heard about them from the GMI Rocket show. So thank you again to everybody. If you're watching this or listening to it live, I'll be taking a few weeks off for some international travel, but I will be back in a handful of weeks. So with that, everybody have a wonderful weekend. Be safe, take care of yourselves, and peace out.